The chamber of the Galactic Conclave was built for giants. Lieutenant Elias Cade stood at the edge of humanity's delegation, boots planted on a floor polished to a mirror sheen, crania's neck to take in vaulted arches that seemed carved for gods rather than diplomats. Light from a dying red star filtered through crystalline walls, tinting everything with a faint, bloody hue. The scale reminded him of standing in a cathedral. Except here the worship was for power, not faith. All around him, titans moved. The insectoid KYRR clicked and rattled in their bronze carapaces, taller than armored vehicles he'd once deployed beside. The scaled Draxians loomed with corded muscles, horns sweeping like scythes, every breath a growl. Biomechanical envoys from the machine clan Irovex floated in silence, their voices transmitted as metallic chords. And seated in shadow near the far wall were the Viraxi, silent predators, their black chitin and polished domes reflecting the chamber lights like hunting helmets. Elias was 5'10", lean from service, scar on his chin, eyes that had seen mud and fire on battlefields no one here would bother naming. Among these beings, he might as well have been a child. He caught the faintest whisper from the KYR delegation, fragile, soft-boned. Chittering laughter followed. Elias ignored it. He had been briefed before the mission. Humans would be underestimated. That's fine, his captain had told him. Let them laugh. Our job is to endure, and endurance has teeth. At the center of the chamber, High Regent Scorith of the Draxians rose. His sheer bulk silenced the susurrus of the hall. Armor plates glistened beneath the star's red glow, and when he spread his arms, the air seemed to tremble. Honored species of the Conclave, Scorith thundered, we are gathered to discuss the petition of the newest supplicants. His gaze swung to human table, lingering with contempt. The Earthborn. The word rolled from his mouth like filth. Elias remained at his post behind the human envoy, but he felt the heat of every eye drawn to their table. Ambassador Solon, composed and silver-haired, inclined his head politely. Humanity thanks the Conclave for this audience. Scorith sneered. You thank us? Yes. But gratitude does not equal worth. Tell me. His eyes narrowed, fixing not on Solon, but on Elias. Does your kind think muscle can be replaced by wit? Do you think frailty makes you equal? The chamber rumbled with amusement. Elias knew this was theater. Scorith wasn't questioning. He was performing. Still, the deliberate choice to single out the smallest man in the chamber was a knife meant to cut deep. Solon began to rise, but Elias shook his head slightly. Permission unspoken. Elias stepped forward, chin raised. His voice carried clear, steady. We don't claim equality through size, Regent. We claim it through survival. When the storms broke our cities, we rebuilt. When fire consumed our skies, we adapted. And when others came to break us, we fought back. Scorith's grin widened, showing serrated teeth. Survival of vermin is not the strength of hunters. Elias didn't flinch. Funny thing about vermin, Regent, no matter how many times you crush them, they're still there when you wake up. The ripple of sound in the chamber wasn't laughter. It was shock. The smaller delegations tilted their heads, intrigued. Scorith's grin faltered, just a fraction. Elias met his gaze without lowering his own. Every instinct screamed at him to bow his head, to yield to the towering presence in front of him. Instead, he remembered training fields, remembered dust in his lungs, remembered standing against artillery when others ran. He stood his ground now, not because he was unafraid, but because he knew predators recognized only one language: refusal to yield. Then a sound cut the air, not from Scorith, from the shadows where the Viraxi sat. A low, resonant click, almost like the cracking of stone. Heads turned toward the predators. They rarely moved, never spoke in public gatherings. Yet one of them rose. The Viraxi warrior's height dwarfed even Scorith. Its limbs were long and angular, carapace gleaming with oily reflections. The face was hidden beneath the smooth dome of its skull, featureless save for the faint shimmer of eyes deep within. When it stepped forward, silence crashed across the chamber. It stopped 3 paces from Elias. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to 2 figures, one small, fragile human, the other a predator born of nightmare and war. The Viraxi tilted its head. When it spoke, its voice was a low vibration, translated through hidden resonators. Little brother. The words were simple, but they detonated through the chamber like a blade through glass. Every delegation froze. Even the Irovex machines paused their harmonic transmissions. Scorith's eyes widened, then narrowed into fury. The predators never acknowledged outsiders. To name someone little brother was not mockery. It was kinship. It was respect. Elias felt the heat of hundreds of stares. He wanted to speak, to ask why, but instinct told him silence was stronger. He simply met the Varaxi's gaze and gave the barest nod. The predator inclined his head once in return, then retreated to the shadows. Scorus slammed a clawed fist against the marble dais. This insult cannot stand. His voice thundered, but it sounded desperate, almost brittle. The predators mock us all by lowering themselves too. He gestured at Elias with contempt. This. But no one laughed with him. The chamber had shifted. The smallest voice had held its ground. The apex predator had spoken. Scortha's roar sounded less like dominance and more like a cornered beast. Elias exhaled slowly, heartbeat steady. He did not smile. Not yet. He knew better than to show triumph too soon. But inside, a thought took root. If the galaxy's hunters saw humanity as kin, then perhaps mankind was no longer the prey Scorth believed. The chamber did not recover easily from the Varaxi's words. Delegates shifted in their seats, some whispering, some glaring at the human table as if Elias Cade had cast a spell. Ambassador Solon masked his astonishment with practiced calm, but Elias caught the flicker of relief in his eyes. Humanity had come to the conclave, expecting ridicule. They had not expected a predator to call them kin. Scorth, however, was far from finished. When the assembly resumed, his voice carried a darker edge. Do not mistake silence for approval, the Draxian boomed. These proceedings concern stability. Humanity is a hazard. They scatter across their system like children with matches, igniting flames they cannot contain. He spread his claws toward the gathered species. They breed quickly, adapt chaotically, and rush into wars they cannot win. The galaxy should not elevate vermin simply because they endure. Gasps and murmurs rolled across the hall. The insult was deliberate, calculated. Ambassador Solon leaned forward, lips parting to respond. But Elias knew the regent's eyes were not on Solon. They were on him. Tell me, small one, Scorus said, his voice like gravel-grinding steel. When the predators call you brother, do you imagine yourself their equal? Do you believe endurance makes you worthy of standing here? Elias stepped forward again, careful not to hurry. Every motion was measured, as if he had all the time in the universe. You seem very concerned with us, Regent. For creatures you consider vermin, we occupy quite a lot of your attention. A ripple of uneasy laughter spread from the minor delegations. Some of the insectoid KYR clicked approvingly. Scortha's grin was a snarl. Attention is what one pays to infestations. Elias tilted his head. Funny thing, infestations thrive in places that looked unshakable until the day they fell apart. He let the pause linger. I suppose that's why predators respect us. They understand survival when they see it. The Varaxi did not move, but the subtle scrape of claws against stone echoed in the silence. The sound was enough to freeze several nearby envoys in place. Elias could feel the shift in the room. Each word he spoke forced the chamber to reconsider whether humanity was truly weak or simply underestimated. Scortha's performance had cracked. The regent leaned forward, lowering his voice so that the words dripped with threat. Careful, human. Words can cut deeper than claws. And I would hate to see your kind bleed in their first hour at this table. Ambassador Solon rose smoothly then, tone diplomatic. High Regent, if your only purpose is to hurl insults, perhaps the conclave should remind us all that this chamber was built for discourse, not theater. Scortha's eyes flashed, but the speaker's dais signaled the end of the current session with a resonant chime. Debate would continue another day. Elias exhaled slowly. The regent had not bested him, not today. But Elias knew predators never abandoned the hunt after one failed strike. That evening, the conclave hosted its customary banquet in the grand atrium. Less a meal than a ritual for species to posture over food they couldn't stomach. The humans had politely declined most of what was offered. Elias picked at a plate of roasted tubers while pretending not to notice the stares. The atrium ceiling stretched so high that banners of star systems hung like sails. The smell was a war of spices, metals, and ozone. Conversations overlapped, trade disputes, military boasting, veiled threats. Elias kept his distance from the main clusters. He was there as a guard, not a guest. But Scorth wasn't done with him. The regent strode across the atrium with the confidence of someone who owned every stone beneath his feet. His retinue of armored guards parted the crowd like a spearhead. He stopped directly in front of Elias, towering like a mountain. Still hiding behind words, little soldier? Scorth asked, loud enough for others to hear. Tell me, Do you bark so loudly because you know you cannot bite? Elias looked up at him, expression dry. Maybe, but sometimes barking is enough to make bigger creatures think twice. The nearby crowd chuckled nervously. Skortha's eyes narrowed. You mistake amusement for respect, the regent said. His claws flexed as though itching for violence. One day soon, word will fail you. Elias didn't blink. One day soon, regent. Your threats will sound like begging. Gasps. A hush rippled outward. Even the KYRR chatter stopped. For a moment, Elias wondered if Skorth would strike him then and there. The regent's muscles bunched, and his breath came in low growls. But before he could move, a shadow loomed between them. The Varaxi had risen. The predator stood with silent menace, its faceless dome reflecting both Elias and Skorth in warped mirror. It didn't speak, but its presence alone pressed down on the hall like a storm front. Skorth's snarl faltered. For all his arrogance, even he did not wish to draw the attention of the Varaxi too long. He stepped back, cloak snapping like wings. Enjoy your moment, human. It will not last. The regent retreated, guards closing ranks around him. The crowd exhaled collectively, tension dissolving into chatter again. Elias remained where he was, pulse steady, though he could feel the weight of the Varaxi's gaze. Slowly, he lifted his chin. The predator tilted its head, the faintest echo of earlier. Then, without a word, it turned and returned to its shadows. Ambassador Solon appeared at Elias's side. You realize, the older man murmured. You become the center of every whisper in this hall. Elias smirked faintly. Better than being invisible. Or worse, dead, Solon replied. His tone carried warning, not humor. Be careful. Skorth has a long memory, and you've struck him where it hurts most, pride. Elias watched the regent's retreating form. Good. Pride is softer than armor, easier to pierce. The ambassador shook his head, but there was the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Later, alone in his assigned quarters, Elias sat on the edge of a steel bunk, boots still on, jacket slung across a chair. The room hummed with recycled air and the distant vibration of station machinery. He replayed the events of the day, each exchange, each look. He could still hear the predator's voice, low, resonant, final. Little brother. He didn't understand it. Not fully, but he knew what it meant to others. Recognition. Kinship. Predators did not waste words. Elias lay back, staring at the ceiling. He had not come to the conclave expecting to speak, let alone to be named. Yet somehow, the smallest figure in the room had become the one Skorth wanted most to break. And if the Varaxi saw something in him worth naming, then maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would too. The conclave's grand banquet hall gleamed like a forge. Columns of silver stone stretched high into shadow, banners of conquered systems draping the walls. Light shimmered across long tables crowded with foods few species could eat without poison warnings. The air was a clash of scents. Ozone, spiced oils, the faint copper tang of alien blood wine. Lieutenant Elias Cade stood with his back against a pillar, scanning the room. His duty was simple. Watch, listen, survive. He was no diplomat. But after the regent's assaults earlier that day, Elias knew every eye was searching for him as much as for the ambassador. Ambassador Solon mingled with cautious grace, trading words and languages stitched together by translators. Elias could tell Solon carried himself lighter than usual. Humanity's survival in this hall suddenly seemed less desperate, but that made Elias the lightning rod. And lightning was already gathering. Scores swept through the hall like a storm front, robes trailing, guards forming a wedge around him. Conversation hushed as he approached, voices shrinking to whispers. His gaze locked on Elias, lips curling in a predator's smile. There he is. Skorth boomed, loud enough for the whole chamber. The smallest soldier in the galaxy, the pet human who mistakes insolence for courage. Laughter rose from the Dominion's delegates, deep and cruel. Even neutral species leaned away, not wanting to be caught siding with humanity against a power like Skorth. Elias stepped off the pillar, meeting the regent's approach with calm steadiness. His chest didn't rise faster, his hands didn't twitch. He had learned long ago that stillness rattled bullies more than bluster. Careful, Regent, Elias said, his voice level. Keep shouting my name, and people might think you're obsessed. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel this time. It was sharp, nervous. A few insectoid mandibles clicked in amusement. The machine clan's harmonic tones even shifted upward, as though hiding chuckles in binary. Skortha's face hardened. He lowered his massive frame until his teeth hovered inches from Elias's face. Do you think you are safe in this hall? Do you think walls of law will stop me from reminding you what prey feels before it dies? Elias didn't look away. I think if you knew how to scare me, Regent, you would have managed it by now. The air thickened, the crowd holding breath. Scortha's hand twitched toward the hilt of his ceremonial blade. It would have been a violation of conclave law. But Elias knew men like him cared little for law when pride was wounded. Then a sound cut through the silence. A resonant crack, like stone breaking beneath pressure. The Varaxi rose. They had sat unmoving at the edges all night, black forms blending into shadow, eyes hidden beneath polished domes. When one stepped forward now, the chamber recoiled. Even Scortha's guard stiffened. The predator's carapace glistened like wet obsidian, every joint humming with restrained strength. It walked past tables without glancing at food or faces, its clawed feet clicking against stone. The hall became a graveyard of silence. It stopped between Elias and Scorth. The Varaxi loomed, easily 3 times Elias's height, skeletal frame taut with lethal power. Its head tilted, the smooth dome reflecting Elias's pale face and the regent's snarl side by side. When it spoke, the voice was deep layered, vibrating in bones more than ears. Little brother. The words detonated across the chamber. Elias felt every gaze burn into him. Delegates shifted uneasily, translators whispering the phrase in dozens of tongues. For the first time, Scorth looked unsettled. His mouth worked soundlessly for a moment before anger overtook shock. You dare, he roared at the predator. You debase yourselves by lowering kinship to this fragile wretch. The Varaxi turned its dome toward Scorth. Silence radiated like a weapon. Then it spoke again, slower, as if the words carried the weight of history. He does not lower us. He reflects us. Murmurs surged through the hall. The predator's voice continued, calm but final. He is small, yet when pressed, he does not bow. He endures hunger. He endures fear. He endures giants who mistake noise for strength. Its head angled back toward Elias. That is a hunter's spirit. That is blood worth naming. Scorth slammed a clawed fist against the table, cracking stone. You insult centuries of order. Predators speak to predators, not vermin. The Varaxi straightened, towering even taller. Then hear me. Regent of noise, a hunter decides what is prey. Not you. Gasps spread. Even the machine clan cut their harmonic voices mid-note. The Varaxi had spoken more tonight than in decades of assemblies, and every word was a blade cutting Scortha's authority. Elias's throat felt dry, but he kept his stance steady. He hadn't asked for this, hadn't earned it in his own eyes, but refusing it would look like weakness. He met the predator's reflection, without flinching. He nodded once, sharp and certain. Then I'll wear the name, little brother. The Varaxi inclined its head, a gesture rare and deliberate, before stepping back into shadow. The chamber erupted. Some delegations shouted protests. Others murmured approval. The KYRR clicked furiously among themselves. The Iravex emitted binary tones of analysis. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone knew it. Scortha's roar cut through the noise. This farce will not stand. He pointed a claw at Elias. Your kind will regret this mockery. I will see to it. But his words rang hollow now. The crowd's attention no longer bent entirely toward him. The predator had chosen, and in that choice, humanity's weakness had become something more dangerous: recognition. Ambassador Solon hurried to Elias's side, his voice pitched low. Do you realize what just happened? Elias kept his eyes on the regent's retreating form. Yeah, I just got adopted by the scariest thing in the galaxy. Solon exhaled through his nose, half laugh, half groan. Then may heaven help us all. Later, when the banquet ended, Elias walked the corridor back to his quarters alone. The station's lights dimmed to mimic night, but his mind was bright, restless. The word echoed in him, little brother. Why? He was no predator. He was a soldier with scars, a man who refused to flinch because flinching never saved anyone. Yet something in him had resonated with creatures that defined fear itself. He stopped before the door to his quarters and looked back down the corridor. The conclave station stretched far, lights disappearing into distance. Somewhere in those shadows, the Varaxi waited, watching. Elias clenched his fists, then relaxed them. He wasn't sure if humanity had just gained a protector, or stepped into a spotlight too bright to survive. But one truth was clear. From this night on, the smallest species in the room would never be ignored again. The corridor outside Elias Cade's quarters was quiet, too quiet for a station packed with thousands of delegates. He had learned to trust silences. In the war zones back home, silence meant a sniper scope, a buried charge, a trap waiting to be sprung. Now, aboard the Conclave station, it meant something different. Politics sharpened the knives. The door panel blinked green at his approach. He hesitated, scanning the shadows first. He wasn't paranoid. He was alive because paranoia had been survival. A low scrape answered him. Metal against metal. A presence too heavy to be casual. Elias turned. Regent Scorth emerged from the gloom like a storm breaking through fog, flanked by 2 Dominion guards in scaled armor. The overhead lights glinted off his claws. He carried no ceremonial robe now, only a simple harness that left his muscular bulk exposed. He looked less like a ruler and more like what he had always been, a predator unleashed. So here he is, Scorth growled, voice thick with venom. The human cub who hides behind shadows and borrowed names. Elias forced his heartbeat steady. You've got a way of making entrances, Regent. Ever tried knocking? One of the guards hissed, but Scorth lifted a claw and silenced him. His eyes burned as he stepped closer. You think clever words protect you? You mistake laughter for strength. What happened in the hall was theater. Here, there are no witnesses. Elias let the silence stretch, then said, Funny, sound like you're afraid of them. The insult landed. Scorth's lip curled back, fangs glinting. His tail lashed the air like a whip. Afraid? I could snap your bones before your heart finished a beat. But no, I want you to understand what it means to challenge me. The guards shifted closer. Elias weighed his options. He was unarmed. Station law forbade weapons outside secure zones. His only tools were the habits drilled into him. Observation, timing, and refusal to break. He stepped backward deliberately, keeping his voice calm. Then tell me, Regent, if I'm so beneath you, why waste your night stalking me? The guard stiffened. The word stung more than Elias expected. Scorth's chest rose and fell in a slow, furious rhythm. He was holding himself back, Elias realized, not because of law, but because of fear. Not fear of Elias, fear of the Varaxi. Elias saw the realization spark and press harder. Because if I vanish, they'll know. They'll smell the lie on you. And the great Scorth, terror of systems, will find himself prey to something he can't fight. Scorth lunged, slamming a clawed hand against the wall beside Elias's head. The impact dented the alloy panel, sparks flaring. The force rattled Elias's bones, but he didn't flinch. You live because I permit it, Scorth hissed. But remember this. When a Varaxi tire their novelty, you will stand alone again. And then, little man, I will make you wish for a quick death. Elias met his gaze without wavering. Then I'll still be standing. Can you say the same? For a moment, the corridor felt ready to explode. Guards flexed claws, Scorth's chest heaved. Elias's muscles coiled for first strike. Then a sound carried down the corridor, a clicking rhythm. Heavy, deliberate steps. The guards froze. Scorth's nostrils flared. Elias didn't need to turn to know who approached. The Varaxi. They moved with no hurry, their presence bending the atmosphere around them. One stepped into the dim light, dome gleaming, claws folded loosely at its sides. It regarded the scene with no visible emotion, yet the tension shifted instantly. The air belonged to them now. Is there a problem? The predator asked, voice low and resonant. Scorth snarled, but dropped his hand from the wall. He took a step back, dragging dignity over his fury like a torn cloak. We were merely clarifying positions. The Varaxi tilted its head. Positions clarify themselves. In time. The pause lingered until Scorth barked at his guards. They withdrew down the hall, boots scraping fast despite attempts to appear steady. Scorth's eyes lingered on Elias one last time, venomous and promising retribution, before he disappeared into the shadows. The silence returned. Elias finally exhaled. He straightened his collar where dust from the impact smeared it, then turned toward the looming Varaxi. You didn't have to step in, he said quietly. The predator's head tilted again, reflecting his small human frame in its smooth dome. Little brother does not walk alone. Elias swallowed. I'm not sure what that means yet. Meaning is hunted, the Varaxi said. Not given. It lingered another breath, then melted back into shadow, leaving Elias with nothing but silence and the dented wall at his back. The next morning, the conclave buzzed with rumors. Whispers moved faster than light here. By breakfast, the entire assembly knew Scorth had confronted the human soldier. By midday, the version circulating claimed Elias had stared down the regent without so much as a blink. By evening, Some stories insisted he had challenged Skorith outright and survived because of Araxi shadowed him like a guardian. Elias sat through the chatter in the delegation chamber, listening but not speaking. Solon paced behind him, half amused and half panicked. "Do you hear what they're saying?" the ambassador muttered. "You become a symbol overnight. Half the minor factions want to test if humanity's spine is real. The other half think aligning with us makes them safer." Elias rubbed a hand over his face. "I didn't ask for this." "No one ever does," Solon said, lowering his voice. "Symbols aren't chosen. They're branded by fire. And now you're wearing it." Elias looked out across the chamber floor, where Skorith stood in furious conference with his allies. The regent's body language was pure rage, but beneath it Elias sensed calculation. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, Elias dreamed. He stood in a vast plain under alien stars. Shadows moved at the edges, shapes low and fast. He held no weapon, only his breath and the weight of eyes watching him from every direction. The Varaxi stepped out of the dark. No words this time, only the reflection of Elias in its dome, small but unbroken. The predator's claw touched the earth, drawing a circle. Inside the circle stood Elias. Outside, the shadows prowled. When Elias woke, his sheets were damp with sweat, his fists clenched. The circle burned in his mind. He spent the next day preparing, not for combat, but for endurance. He studied faces, memorized routines, tested the limits of the Conclave's laws. Skorith was too proud to let humiliation rest. A strike was coming. Elias's only weapon would be to outlast it, to prove once again that he could not be broken. As he stood before his mirror, adjusting his uniform, the faintest echo of Varaxi's words replayed in his chest. "Little brother does not walk alone." He wasn't sure if it was a promise or a warning, but he knew one thing. When Skorith moved again, humanity would be standing in the center of that circle, and Elias would not step out. The Conclave Central Forum was never meant for blood. Its floors were smooth white stone, carved with the symbols of dozens of civilizations. Its walls glowed with light from 1,000 suns, captured and bent through prisms. The chamber was designed for debate, not for challenge. Yet tonight, it felt like an arena. Delegates filled the balconies, voices low and tense. Rumors had swept the station. Regent Skorith had demanded a trial of strength. Not war, not assassination. Something older. A test to prove that humanity's newfound recognition was fraud. Ambassador Solon had fought to block it, but the Conclave's laws allowed public challenges. For Skorith, it was a perfect stage. Defeat Elias here, and humanity's fragile image would collapse. Elias stepped onto the floor alone. No weapons, no armor, just the plain dark uniform of Earth's delegation. His boots echoed in the hush, his eyes scanning the tiers above. Every species was watching, some with curiosity, some with hunger. Across the chamber, the regent entered. His guards peeled away, leaving him to stride forward with naked confidence. His scales shimmered, muscles rippling beneath them. He carried nothing but his claws and the weight of reputation. The silence thickened as the two faced each other across the circle. Skorith bared his fangs. This is where the noise ends. Tonight, the galaxy will see what your kind truly is, brittle bones and empty defiance. Elias's jaw tightened. Maybe they'll see the difference between cruelty and courage. A gong reverberated from the walls. The challenge began. Skorith struck first, a blur of claws and bulk. Elias rolled aside, stone splintering where the regent's hand hit. He came up fast, ducking under a sweep, every nerve alive. He wasn't strong enough to trade blows. He knew that. His only chance was endurance. Stay alive. Refuse to bow. Skorith circled, tail lashing. Run, little insect. Show them how prey scatters. Elias shifted his weight, keeping distance. His breaths came steady, controlled. Prey runs. Hunters wait. The insult landed. Skorith lunged again, this time faking left and striking from the right. Elias barely twisted clear, the claws grazing his uniform. Pain seared across his ribs where fabric tore. He staggered but stayed upright, his eyes locked on Skorith's. He refused to look away. The balconies erupted in murmurs. Every missed strike was a statement. Elias wasn't winning, but he wasn't breaking either. Minutes dragged into an eternity of motion. Skorith pressed harder, sweat gleaming beneath the scales, rage fueling each blow. Elias countered with grit. Sidesteps, short bursts, stubborn refusal to fall. Then Skorith's tail whipped out and caught him full in the chest. Elias hit the stone hard, breath crushed from his lungs. The crowd gasped. Scorth loomed above him, claws raised high. "This is your truth," the regent snarled. "Small things are crushed." Elias's chest burned, vision swimming, but his body moved before thought. He rolled sideways, scraping skin raw against a stone, and Scorth's claws slammed into empty floor. The strike cracked the chamber surface. Dust plumed. Elias staggered to his feet, every breath a knife. His legs trembled, but held. He spat blood onto the white stone. "Then why am I still standing?" The shout carried through the chamber like a flare. Some delegations rose from their seats, antennae twitching, eyes wide. Scorth's snarl broke into a roar. He charged again, reckless now, fury overriding calculation. The regent's claws raked down. Elias ducked, caught a wrist with both hands, and used Scorth's momentum to pivot aside. For a heartbeat, the predator stumbled. The crowd gasped again, not because Elias had overpowered him, but because he had dared to try. The circle had shifted. Elias felt it. He couldn't win by strength, but survival wasn't loss. Refusal to bow was victory. He steadied himself, chest heaving. "You call yourself predator. But look at you, swinging at a man half your size. If that's power, the galaxy should be laughing." The words cut deeper than blows. Scorth froze, caught between striking again and the eyes of the entire conclave burning into him. The chamber trembled with silence. And then, clicking steps. From the shadows of the balcony, the Varaxi rose. One after another, black silhouettes leaned forward. Their domes glistened, their forms skeletal and terrible. Their claws tapped against the stone in rhythm, a sound older than law. The lead predator descended, its movement slow, inevitable. It stepped onto the circle and faced Scorth directly. "Enough," it said, voice echoing like thunder underwater. "The test is ended." Scorth bared his fangs. "You have no right." The Varaxi's claw lashed out, not striking flesh, but slicing a deep groove into the stone between Elias and Scorth. The sound rang like a blade through bone. "The right is taken," it said, "and we have taken it." The predator turned, its dome reflecting Elias, bloody but unbroken. "Little brother stands. That is enough." The balconies erupted. Shouts, roars, alien harmonics, chaos of 100 reactions. But the truth had already settled. Elias had not fallen, and the Varaxi had claimed him again, sealing it before all. Scorth's breath came ragged. Fury twisted into humiliation. His claws flexed once, twice. Then he spun and stormed from the chamber, tail thrashing. His guards scrambled after him. The gong sounded once more. The challenge was over. Afterward, Elias sat alone in the quiet of his quarters, ribs wrapped, chest aching with every breath. Soul in pace, hands restless. "Do you understand what you've done? You've carved humanity into the Conclave's memory." Scorth wanted to show weakness. Instead, you've shown defiance strong enough to rattle predators. Elias stared at the ceiling, exhaustion pressing heavy. "I didn't win." Solon stopped pacing. "You survived. In front of every eye that mattered. That was a victory." A knock rattled the door. Heavy, deliberate. Elias rose stiffly and opened it. The Varaxi stood there, shadow filling the hall, its head tilted, dome reflecting him again. For a long moment, it said nothing. Then, "You walked the circle and did not break. That is the hunt's measure." Elias swallowed, words catching. "Why me? Why humanity?" The predator's voice rumbled low. "Because the smallest teeth bite hardest when the world believes them dull." It turned and left, steps fading into silence. Elias stood in the doorway, ribs burning, breath shallow. But inside, something steadied. The circle he had stepped into would never vanish. Humanity had been named, and for the first time, the galaxy's predators would think twice before baring their fangs.